Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Rosie.
How are you doing tonight, Rosie?
I'm doing good. I just finished up my Patreon episode.
Yeah.
Woot woot.
Right. We just recorded a Patreon episode for our $5 tier level.
Mm-hmm.
So $5 patrons, you have some bonus material coming this week.
You've got a present.
It's probably up already.
Should be.
When this comes out. Speaking of Patreon, we also have 3 new patrons to thank this week.
Wow.
So thank you, Deanna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jules.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
We appreciate you all so much.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate all our patrons. And also, Jill sent us a really thoughtful message
Aww.
that I thought we should share on the show.
Yeah.
Because I really appreciate it. I'll read it since you'll probably read the review.
Okay.
She said, "Hey Ryan and Rosie, I want to start this off by saying how much I love you both. I love anything true crime, but something about VOV is different. You both really genuinely care, and you really can tell. Y'all truly were a joy to listen to throughout the dumpster fire we call 2020, and I eagerly await each new episode. And now for the real reason I'm writing y'all. I know it's an old one, but I just re-listened to Rosie's episode.
Oh, re-listened?
I just want to let you know how much I appreciate your courage to tell your story. I have a very similar one, and up until I heard that episode, I really felt like I was the one to blame for what happened. Y'all helped me more or less come to terms with what happened, and I just really needed to tell you, or to let you know how grateful I am. So, that's really cool.
That is so sweet.
Especially the part about your story.
Yeah.
I think that's the first episode that's publicly available now. If you haven't heard Rosie's story yet, the recording quality is
very
not
poor.
great.
Very poor.
And we didn't really know what we were doing yet, but Rosie really speaks from the heart. And if you want to get to know her a little better, you'll definitely get to know Rosie in that episode. And we want to thank everyone who's written to us about that episode, because you've gotten a lot of feedback from that, and a lot of really grateful people that you had the courage to tell it, and I appreciate it as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Jill. That's really, those are some really, really sweet words, and I'm glad that you don't blame yourself for what happened to you, because I can guarantee it was not your fault.
All right, thank you. We better share this review quick, and then jump into the episode.
Okay, I'll read it.
Sounds good.
It's entitled, Sweet. As much of an oxymoron it is to say that your true crime podcast is sweet, I stand by it. You both have the utmost respect and empathy for the people included in each story. It's nice, there's no judgment. And love the cats, makes every podcast sincere. I'm glad to have found your podcast. You guys are bomb.com. Much love from BC. I think that, Allie, you're the first one to say bomb.com in regards to our show.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think so. But, yes, thank you, Allie from Canada.
Yeah, and I'd like to let you know there's a cat on my lap as we speak.
And behind you.
And behind me.
All right.
This episode of Voice of the Victim is brought to you by Yarn. If you're listening to this show, you're probably a fan of true crime stories, which means you might enjoy the Yarn app. That's Yarn. Y-A-R-N.
Yeah, Yarn offers everything true crime, from their chat fiction stories to choose your own adventure experiences, which I really think is cool, and now even full audio dramas. I recently found a text thread story about a group of people sneaking into Area 51.
Oh, really?
Which is fascinating. And along the way, I was able to make certain choices for the characters to influence the way the story turned out. So it's kind of like an RPG. Which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. Tap through the most addictive and immersive stories today only on Yarn. Trust me, with over 27 million downloads, Yarn is a must-play. Download Yarn for free on Apple App Store or Google Play. That's Y-A-R-N. Download it today to watch, read, and listen to all your favorite fiction stories. From steamy to horror, Yarn has it all.
This episode of Voice of the Victim podcast is supported by Best Fiends. We all have a lot of crazy stuff on our minds right now, but one of my favorite ways to get my mind off of all that is by playing Best Fiends. And you've heard us talk about Best Fiends. It's a fun game, and because of that, it's very popular, with over 100 million global downloads. So if you haven't yet, maybe it's time you jump on the wagon. Best Fiends has found a way to be both very engaging and challenging, while also feeling laid back and casual. because none of us need more stress right now. Rosie, will you explain Best Fiends to our listeners just in case they haven't heard of it?
Yeah. Best Fiends is a puzzle game. It features these little bug guys that you can collect throughout the different stages of the game. I really like this game. This week, I want to talk about being in the levels of 370 and up. They throw in a huge curveball here. What they have are these little beehives, and in addition to getting different combinations of mushrooms, strawberries, or flowers, you also have to free the bees out of the hives. Super tricky, but super fun, and super pays off once you complete your level.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And like we've told you before, Best Fiends never gets old because they update it every single month with new events and new challenges like that. So it keeps it fresh. Also, you don't need to be connected to the internet to progress through the game, so that's a very big plus. So engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must play. Go download Best Fiends for free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. So we better jump into the story. Tonight we're talking about Yingying Zhang. So Rosie, you ready?
Yep. Yingying Zhang was born on December 21st, 1990, to parents Li Fengyi and Rongao Zhang in the city of Nanping.
Oh, so Nanping is in the Fujian province of China. Now, Rosie, I have a question for you. Did you know that there's a Grand Canyon in China?
No.
I didn't know that either until this morning. It turns out Nanping is only 20 minutes east from the Ziwan Grand Canyon in China. Which it looks a lot different than the Grand Canyon in the U.S., but still, I had no idea. So just a little random fact.
Yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, Nanping is relatively pretty far south in China on the eastern side. It's about 3.5 hours from the coast of the China Sea across from Taiwan. So just to give you an idea of where it is.
Okay. Yingying's father worked in a Chinese factory to support his family, while her mother worked hard to take care of the children and keep a comfortable home. Eventually, Yingying's parents had another child, her little brother named Zhengying. I think that's how we say it.
Yeah, I think so. And something I think is really cool is that Yingying played guitar and sang lead vocals in a band called Cute Horse. So that's something I have in common with her. But unlike me, she was actually really good at school as well.
Also, I want to point out that her family was very humble. They were not very well off, but they seemed like a very tight-knit factory. In fact, they were so humble. Yingying's mother, she didn't even know how to read or write.
Wow.
But they were still a very tight unit, and they loved each other.
I think you said factory instead of family. But
they were a tight-knit factory. She attended Sun Yat-sen University, where she did very well, graduating in the top of her class. Sun Yat-sen University is almost like Harvard in the United States. Very well-known university. And her mother described it as very tough and never afraid of hard work.
Yingying, like you mentioned, her family was very humble, and she was actually the first person in her family to go to college. They didn't have much money, but she was determined to help in any way she could. But her motivations weren't only financial.
Yingying also spent time volunteering as a teacher for the underprivileged. And when she did save up some money, she bought gifts for her family.
And these weren't gifts of extravagance. It was things like a cell phone, a microwave, and an air conditioner. You know, things that most of us take for granted, but they were sorely needed in the Zhang household.
Her ultimate plan was to become a university professor and to be able to help support her parents who had worked hard to support her growing up. And even with all that, she never felt as if she was better than her family. She was very close with her parents and always made time to call them and catch up with them. After graduating from Sun Yat-sen University, she went on to Peking University, Shenzhen Graduate School. At the first meeting of the classmates there, she met a boy named... can't remember how to say his name.
I think it's Zhaolin Hu.
Zhaolin, that sounds right. Okay, Zhaolin Hu. He was instantly enamored with her beauty, and she must have been into him as well because they started dating. Zhaolin loved that she never hesitated for a moment when other people needed help. He was attracted to her selflessness, along with her ability to kick back and have fun playing in her band.
Yeah, she sounds like a pretty cool person.
Mm-hmm. And while she was there, she was working towards a graduate degree in environmental engineering. In 2016, both Yingying and her boyfriend graduated at the top of their class.
Now, like we mentioned, she was studying environmental engineering, and she also had a dream of studying abroad in America. So she found that the University of Illinois actually had a highly regarded agriculture program, which is what she was studying. So she could go there to study crop photosynthesis and fulfill both dreams at once.
Crop photosynthesis does sound riveting. So, in April of 2017, Yingying traveled to the United States where she planned to conduct her research for a year in the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Sciences within the University of Illinois. There, she was just as well loved as she had been at home. Her classmates saw her as very intelligent and brave, while also very kind and approachable. She was very optimistic and free-spirited, and that left an impact on her fellow students. She had also become engaged to her boyfriend, who kept in touch with her every day while she was abroad. They planned to get married in October of 2017. That year, at the age of 26, Yingying wrote in her journal, "Life is too short to be ordinary." Oh,
I love that.
that's so good.
Yeah. She had this drive and passion combined with a care for other people, which to me is real potential, like to make the world a better place. But like I always say, there's a reason we're talking about her tonight. Things didn't exactly go according to her plan after she came to the U.S.
On the afternoon of June 9th, 2017, Yingying planned to take a public bus to an off-campus apartment complex in Urbana, Illinois.
She was actually on her way to a 2 p.m. appointment to sign a new lease for an apartment there, which her friends and family were aware of her plans that day.
Right. She was actually in the lab with some of her friends working on her research, and she told them that she had to leave at 1:30 for this 2 o'clock appointment. So they knew when she was leaving, where she was going, and what time she was supposed to be there. But hours passed, and Yingying's friends back at campus were starting to wonder what was taking her so long. By 9 p.m., she still hadn't returned. No one was able to get a hold of her, and finally at 9:24 p.m., an associate professor called the police to report her missing.
Unfortunately, even after that, she didn't show up. It didn't take long for investigators to realize that this wasn't going to be an easy-to-close missing persons case that was, just a misunderstanding or their phone was dead or something. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a real search.
The police worked together with the FBI to try to find Yingying, putting up a $10,000 reward for information leading to her discovery. Many of Yingying's fellow students band together to coordinate and conduct search efforts on and around campus.
Now, this news was understandably shocking and devastating to Yingying's family back in China, and wanting to do anything they could to find their loved one, her father, boyfriend, and maternal aunt flew to America, and they arrived in town on June 17th to help aid the search and work with investigators.
Several people had made reports of seeing an Asian woman matching Yingying's description in Salem, Illinois.
Salem.
Yes, I knew that. In Salem, Illinois on June 16th. So when family arrived in town, they traveled to Salem with the FBI to follow possible leads. They did end up finding the woman matching the description, but it wasn't Yingying.
Which had to be really disheartening. But police were able to find some info from talking to the leasing agent that Yingying was going to meet, as well as pulling up some security footage from around where she was. And they were able to build kind of a timeline of what actually happened leading up to her disappearance.
Mm-hmm. Yingying was riding the bus on her way to her 2 p.m. appointment, but she was running a little late. She texted the leasing agent at 1:39 p.m. to let them know that she'd be closer to 2:10 p.m. At 1:52 p.m., she got off the bus to transfer to another bus.
But the bus she was on dropped her off on the opposite side of the street from where she needed to be to board the second bus.
She wasn't able to make her way across the street in time to get on the second bus. And she tried flagging it down, but the bus didn't stop.
Now, according to the bus company, it's against policy to stop for riders who are on the wrong side of the street because, in their opinion, it would encourage them to try to run through oncoming traffic. But I don't know. I would think it would be the opposite. Like, if you actually stopped, they'd be like, okay, good, they saw me, and they'd feel okay waiting to cross because they know you saw them.
Right.
If you don't stop, they might try to chase you, to, like, get your attention. So it kind of seems counterintuitive to me. But,
yeah.
But what do I know?
And that's in the security footage. She's running, trying to get their attention. So
yeah, seems like it kind of backfired.
But after this, Yingying was even more behind schedule, and she had no choice but to walk a few blocks to another bus stop. This stop was at the corner of North Goodwin Avenue and West Clark Street, right in front of the university's PBS radio and TV station, WILL. Police were able to pull surveillance video from their cameras, showing that at 2 p.m., a black Saturn Astra, which had passed her as she waited at the bus stop, circled back around and stopped right in front of her at 2:03 p.m. The driver and her talked to each other for about a minute, and then she got into the car.
So now they knew where she was last seen, and obviously now they needed to find this black Saturn Astra.
Mm-hmm. At 2:38 p.m., the leasing agent she was supposed to meet texted her, but she never replied.
So, personally, next time I get ghosted by someone on Craigslist or whatever, we all know how frustrating that can be.
Yes, we do.
But instead of getting mad at them, I'll try to think about this, because you never know what someone else's day has been like.
Wise. Very wise.
This episode of Voice of the Victim podcast is supported by another podcast based on a very famous case you may have heard of. It's called Jeffrey Epstein, the Prince and the Pervert.
We've talked about Jeffrey Epstein in the past, but never in such depth. You won't believe what he got away with right in front of everyone.
A global criminal conspiracy, a prince, a jailed socialite, and a billionaire who may or may not have been murdered.
Jeffrey Epstein, the Prince and the Pervert podcast is hosted by two journalists who have been researching this case since July 2019.
They cover all the topics surrounding Epstein, including Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew, plus the cesspit of criminality around the pedophiles, the conspirators, and enablers.
So go listen to Jeffrey Epstein, the Prince and the Pervert podcast now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Sadly, 10 whole days passed with no usable information. On June 19th, Crime Stoppers announced a $40,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the individuals responsible for the apparent kidnapping which was captured on security video.
Now, this was actually the largest reward ever offered by Crime Stoppers up to that point, but sadly, even with that incentive, nearly another month passed without being able to find Yingying.
On July 14th, desperate to find Yingying, the reward was increased to $50,000. Another month passed without being able to find Yingying, but her family refused to return to China without her. So on August 19th, her mother and little brother also flew to the U.S. so the family could be together while they waited for answers.
Can you imagine how long those 2 months must have been for her mom in China? Mm-hmm. Like, her husband and apparently her sister both left, and she was there alone to take care of the son, but feeling totally helpless and unsettled, being on the other side of the world from her whole family, knowing that her daughter was missing and not being able to do anything about it. This would have been terrible. And this whole family must have been going through so much misery during this time, just having no answers to where she was.
Right. In one of the clips that I watched from the family, they were interviewed in their own home, and they were so poor they didn't even have heat. They were wearing coats in their house, and the mom, she couldn't do anything except for cry while they were interviewing her family.
That's so sad.
It was terrible.
Now, despite not being able to find where Yingying was at this point, the police did actually have some things going on behind the scenes.
Though they were unable to read the license plate numbers on the car in the footage, they pulled up registration data and found a list of 18 different four-door sedan Astras registered in the Champaign County area. One of these cars was registered to someone who had been a former PhD student at the University of Illinois. He had just graduated in May of 2017 from the same campus where Yingying attended, just 1 month after she arrived there.
So there's a bit of a connection there.
The man was 27-year-old Brent Christensen.
So he was a year older than Yingying, and he was at the same college as her for a month, and also owned the same car that she was abducted in. And with that obvious connection, he was brought in for questioning just 3 days after her disappearance. So on June 12th, 2017. So police were really on top of this, that they had the suspect in for questioning before Yingying's family even arrived in the U.S.
Yeah. Christensen was interviewed and his car was inspected. They asked him the simple question, "What were you doing on the afternoon of June 9th, 2017?
So this was only 3 days ago. He should be able to have some faint idea of what he was doing.
You would think. But he claimed he didn't remember what he was doing at the time. And a while later, he said he may have either been sleeping or playing video games at the time.
Didn't you mention he was also intoxicated when he was brought in?
That was later.
Okay, that was a different time.
Yeah.
All right, well, 2 days later, on June 14th, investigators were reviewing the surveillance footage when they found some evidence that solidified Christensen in their minds as a solid suspect. Now, didn't you say someone from the campus is the one who noticed this?
Yeah, I believe it was one of the security guys at the campus, and he was a real car guy, and he noticed this right away. In the footage, the car in question had a sunroof and a cracked hubcap. The car Christensen owned had the same sunroof and a cracked hubcap.
So that's some pretty conclusive evidence right there. But still, that doesn't tell them where Yingying is, which is the main goal here.
On June 15th, he was brought in again to be questioned by the FBI and local investigators, and his car was again brought in for analysis. Investigators noticed that the front passenger side door was much cleaner than the rest of the car.
Which is an obvious red flag when you're suspected of kidnapping someone. Again, that's the door that Yingying got into on the video, and now they've proven that this is the car. So it appears like an obvious attempt to conceal evidence.
That same day, Christensen did finally admit that he'd given a ride to an Asian female, but that he accidentally took a wrong turn which caused her to panic, and he dropped her off just a few blocks away.
Okay, so if he dropped her off, then where did she go? Obviously, when I heard this, I didn't buy it, but it does make me wonder if there's a grain of truth to what he said. Like, he obviously coaxed her to get into his car with the promise of giving her a ride to her appointment that she was late for, so she was like desperate to find a way there, but he obviously didn't take her there. So when he says she panicked, it's probably true, and that's really sad to think about.
While they were questioning him, other agents got written permission to search Christensen's apartment from someone else who lived there. They collected his computers and his cell phone, which they planned to do forensic examination on. Can I point out something from my doc that was really interesting is when they first went to his apartment building, his girlfriend or wife, I can't remember, his female companion was pretty much like naked in the apartment with him. And they ended up having to ask her to put clothes on because they were uncomfortable. And it was really weird. And
so was this...
This was like before this.
Okay. We haven't mentioned this yet, but he was married, and he also had a girlfriend that wasn't his wife.
Oh, so I don't know which one that was.
So, But we'll talk more about that later. Anyway, that's really interesting.
It was really interesting, and the guy asked him if he wouldn't mind coming down to the office, and he said to his female partner, like, what do you think? Do you think I should go? Like, kiddingly. Like, big cheese. I'm really cool.
Oh, my gosh.
And she's like, I don't know. Go.
So this guy, I mean, I don't know. I'm not qualified to give a diagnosis, but from what we're going to talk about, this guy seems like a serious narcissist with, like, a god complex.
He thinks he's a pretty cool cat.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that later, of how the truth finally came out. But, yeah, this guy is very punchable.
Yeah.
But still having no answers on where Yingying was, investigators played it cool and they released Christensen. But obviously they knew he was responsible for it, so they placed him under continuous surveillance. Now, like we mentioned, Christensen had gotten married in 2013 and was still with his wife.
Oh, that's when we got married.
Oh yeah, that's right. But again, he had a girlfriend on the side. So FBI agents approached her probably when they were at the apartment doing the search.
Yeah. Now, they asked her if she would wear a wire.
That only works if you're wearing clothes, though, so.
And she couldn't believe Christensen had done anything wrong, so she agreed to wear it, hoping that this would help exonerate her married boyfriend. A couple weeks later, on June 29th, Christensen actually attended a memorial walk for Yingying Zhang, and while they were together, their conversation was recorded.
Now, this is where it starts to get really disturbing. This is according to an affidavit filed by an FBI agent about what was in that recording that they collected.
According to the affidavit, the recording contained Christensen telling his girlfriend that he had brought Yingying back to his apartment and held her against her will. He went on to brag to his mistress that he was a serial killer, and Yingying was actually his 13th victim.
What the heck? In what world would someone think that their girlfriend would hear this and be like, wow, you're really cool?
Right.
Like, how narcissistic could he be that he thinks that he could say this and everything would be chill?
And they're also at her memorial walk.
Yeah. But sadly, according to what he said, this means that Yingying was dead. So this guy's a piece of trash.
Thankfully, despite his claim in the recording, investigators were unable to find any of the other 13 victims he claimed to have killed. So they seriously doubt that claim.
Can you imagine thinking that murdering one person wasn't threatening enough and feeling the need to make up 13 other victims?
It's just bizarre. It's so obscure.
I don't understand how someone could be so, like, so confident in themselves that they think this was worthy of bragging about.
Psychopathic?
Yeah. Apparently. I mean, I don't know. But, alright. Well, what happened the next day?
On June 30th, 2017, the FBI arrested Christensen and charged him with kidnapping to hold him while they continued their investigation.
Now, according to the law of the land where he was arrested, if a kidnapping results in the death of any person, it's automatic life in prison, or even the death penalty, depending on the jury. Now, at his arrest, there was an accompanying FBI report which revealed more info about what was found on his electronic devices.
They found that back in April, Christensen had used his cell phone to visit sexual fetish websites to interact with a forum called Abduction 101.
Yikes. So that on top of all this other stuff.
That does not look good. On July 5th, bail was denied during a court hearing, partially because Yingying was still missing, and he was clearly the last person to see her. He was also considered a danger to the community. It was also revealed during this hearing that while he was on that recorded walk with his mistress during Yingying's vigil, he had described the characteristics of his ideal victim to her and pointed out different people that matched them.
Can you imagine how uncomfortable you'd feel if this was your boyfriend and he started talking like this?
I hope this wasn't like the norm in their relationship. It's terrifying.
Well, I didn't see the doc, but what kind of vibe did you get from her? Or was she in it?
She wasn't in it
Okay.
before it cut out and I couldn't find the rest of it.
Yeah, well, her interaction with the police was pretty interesting.
Yeah. He was also caught on the recording threatening someone in person, and that person actually came forward to police and provided incriminating evidence against him.
So not a great guy. I can't say that enough. He's obviously a danger to society and shouldn't be let out on bail, but yet his defense attorney argued that he should be released because he had no criminal history and he played an important role in the community.
What role?
Well, I guess because he just graduated with a PhD. I don't know. But talk about a thick skull. I know this guy's forced to defend his client, but jeepers, did he not hear any of the evidence that they said? You need a better argument than that.
Pointing in a crowd what your ideal victim is?
After saying you're a serial killer?
Really doesn't seem like a helpful member of society.
Yeah.
On July 12th, 2017, Brent Christensen was formally indicted for kidnapping Yingying Zhang.
This indictment alleged that now this is some weird legal jargon.
Yeah, I tried and failed.
But that, quote, he willingly and unlawfully seized, confined, inveigled, which means persuaded, but again, that's the legal jargon they use, decoyed, kidnapped, abducted, and carried away Zhang, and otherwise held her for his own benefit and purpose, and used and caused to be used as a means, facility, and instrumentality of interstate commerce, namely a Motorola cellular telephone and a Saturn Astra motor vehicle, in committing and in furtherance of the commission of the offense.
Oh, that's a lot.
Why do they have to say it like this? Just say he used his phone and car to commit the crime. Okay. But, of course, on July 20th, he pled not guilty to these allegations, and his trial was set for 2 years later.
2 years? Seriously, couldn't do better than that?
Yeah, so it happened in June of 2019. But can you imagine being the family of Yingying here and having to literally lose those years of their lives waiting for justice to be done after this horrible loss they suffered? And again, at this point, they still had no idea where their daughter was.
And they're not home. They're in a completely different country. How hard it must have been on their lives and livelihood to go back and forth.
Yeah.
During the trial, it came out that in the morning before he abducted Yingying, he had tried to abduct another woman named Emily Hogan by posing as an undercover police officer. He asked her to get into his car, but she refused and he drove off. But Emily actually posted about the incident to social media. A few hours later, he picked up Yingying Zhang.
Now, during the trial, the awful details about what this poor woman had to endure came out. So we'll be as sensitive as possible, but we think it's important to understand the absolutely horrible things that she had to endure during her final moments. Now, please be warned, this is going to get really disturbing. This guy was a sick and twisted monster, and the things he did to her are disgusting.
This monster brought her back to his apartment and held her there against her will. He choked her and sexually assaulted her. After that, he used a knife to attack her. When he finished that, he dragged Yingying into his bathroom and beat her with a baseball bat before taking her life, removing her head.
It's such an evil thing to do.
Ugh.
And we don't really know what point she died at, but you can imagine her final moments were horrible, horrifying, and excruciating.
I can't even imagine.
But if you're wondering how he did all this at his apartment while he's a married man with a mistress, I guess his wife was out of town for the weekend. So, jeez. I mean, this guy had just gotten a master's PhD. He was married and had a mistress, and that still wasn't enough for him. He had to go seek this out. I can't even wrap my mind around this. The silver lining here, I guess, is that he will never go on to treat patients as a doctor, because this is the kind of person that would abuse their power as a doctor.
Yeah. On June 24th, 2019, a jury found him guilty of 1 count of kidnapping and 2 counts of making false statements to the FBI. Yet they did not unanimously agree on the death penalty. So on July 18th, 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
If you're like me, you might wonder why he wasn't charged with murder.
Yes, wondering.
But apparently, like we mentioned when we were talking about the kidnapping charge, because of the murder, that all wraps into that kidnapping charge because a death occurred during a kidnapping. So he's already getting life without parole. So the rest is just labels, I guess. But basically, it wouldn't affect the outcome of his sentencing. Yet, like you obviously feel, and if I were the family, I'd want this man to be charged with murder.
Yeah, exactly.
But to make matters even worse, we also learned the way he disposed of Yingying's remains basically made it impossible for her body to be recovered and returned to her family for a proper burial.
He spread her remains out into 3 separate garbage bags and placed them in the dumpster outside of his apartment. Then, over the next 2 days, he disposed of her belongings in various dumpsters around the area. By the time this information was revealed, the dumpster with her remains had already been emptied, compacted, and spread over an area 50 yards wide and buried under 30 feet of garbage.
So unfortunately, the hope of her being found is very small, which is so awful for her parents and her brother and her aunt and her fiance. Like, this is all they wanted when they came to America, was to find their loved one, and now they won't have the chance. She was so loved by the people in her life, family and friends, and she had so much potential for accomplishments and such a positive impact on the people around her.
Right.
She was a memorable person. And it's so sad that this was all stolen from her like this because of this absolute garbage person. But that's all we have.
I can't believe that Christensen was able to do these. Like, it's just such a out beyond the boundaries of a normal person to dismember someone and have such a lack of empathy. Dispose of her the way he did, kill her in the first place. It's just sounds so.
And this was all
unreal.
A month after he graduated with a master's PhD. Like, he put all that time and work into college. Isn't that like 8 years of college at least? Maybe more. But he put all that time into college for what? Like, a doctor is supposed to help people.
Maybe that was his, like, sick fascination, like learning how to do surgeries and stuff, like fed into his fetishes. I don't know. Her poor fiance, like, he was interviewed several times and he was so sure that they were going to be able to find her. Had put in so much effort and he was so in love with Yingying and wanted to find her so badly. I just can't imagine. Ugh, it's just hard to swallow.
Yeah. Ugh. So that's awful. It's an awful story. It's really hard when the victim dies in such a horrible way. I guess what I take from this is how inspiring Yingying seemed to be as a person.
Yeah.
By all accounts, she really cared about people. She was a musician and singer, but she also had this drive and desire to help people and to learn. I mean, studying agriculture, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very important thing to understand.
Crop photosynthesis.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about growing food.
Yeah.
But, well, I'm sorry to leave you guys with this horrible... Ugh.
I guess also a warning or a lesson we can take from this is, can't remember her name, but the other gal that was approached by Christensen when he pretended to be an undercover cop.
Oh, yeah, Emily.
Emily talked about in a different interview about how she almost believed him. He said he was an undercover cop and he was just looking for answers about some certain situations happening in that area and was wondering if she could sit in the car for a minute and he could ask her some questions.
Oh my gosh. So he was charismatic and charming.
And he even had a badge, she said. So I feel like that's terrifying too. Like we have to be ultra careful even when it's somebody in a badge in the car. Like it's just
can't trust
it's scary.
Anybody.
It's just really scary. But she was saying how she didn't hear any other like walkie-talkie sounds, and he didn't have a computer in the car, and that's what she just had a weird feeling about it.
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale, that's for sure, to not trust anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Oof, which is not what I want to take away, because like I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but man, when you hear about this stuff. All right, well, we gotta take this and push it away now. And what better way to honor Yingying's life than to try to make the best of what we have?
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't want us to be depressed about this, you know? So, what do you think, Rosie?
I think that watching some Karen in the Wild videos will help.
I'm sorry to anyone whose name is Karen out there.
I'm sorry, too.
Like, it's a very unfortunate label that
it is.
Has been put on these people that are just horrible people, but it is pretty entertaining to watch.
I found a really good channel on YouTube that's Karen's in the Wild. And it actually made me respect police officers a lot because I felt really bad for all the crap that they had to take while trying to handle these ladies. And there are a couple of guys, too.
Yeah, it's not just women. Yeah, so go watch some entertaining stuff and try to enjoy your life. Do you have anything else to say?
Workout plan's going well. Still going strong over here.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Still going strong.
I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm getting sick, so that's not super exciting. Hopefully it's just allergies.
Yeah, that would be pretty lame.
And not the big C.
Yeah, I'm going to go with allergies since that would be pretty normal for you.
Well, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay diligent about situations that could be dangerous. And yeah, take care of yourselves. We appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you guys a lot. We couldn't do it without you, honestly.
Yeah, for real. We'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you on the flippity flip.
Bye.
Bye.